Welcome to our video about the fascinating world of Pokemon and their placement on the Tree of Life. Today, we take a closer look at Sandslash and its relationships with Raticate and Raichu. Both Pokemon belong to the order of rodents. Let's find out how closely related Sandslash is. Baryeutheria is a magnorder of placental mammals that groups together superorders Euarchontoglires and Loriciotheria. With a few exceptions, male Boreotherians have a scrotum, an ancestral feature of the clade. 7. The subclade Scrotifera was named after this feature. The majority of earliest known fossils belonging to this group date to about 66 million years ago, shortly after the KPG extinction event, though molecular data suggest they may have originated earlier. During the Cretaceous period, this is further supported with fossils of Altacreatus magnus and two species from genus Protungulatum dated about 70.6 million years ago. The common ancestor of Baryeutheria lived between 107 and 90 million years ago. 9. The Boreotherian ancestor gave rise to species as diverse as giraffes, pigs, zebras, rhinos, dogs, cats, rabbits, mice, squirrels, bats, whales, dolphins, lemurs, monkeys, and humans. The concept of a Boreotherian ancestor was first proposed in 2004 in the journal Genome Research. 11-12. The paper's authors claimed that the genome sequence of the Boreotherian ancestor could be computationally predicted with 98% accuracy, but would take a few years and a lot of money. It is estimated to contain 3 billion base pairs. Manatees are a family of mammals that also form their own order, the Pholidota. The family consists of 3 extant genera with 8 species, 4 of which live in East, South, and Southeast Asia, and 4 in sub-Saharan Africa. These are insect-eating animals specialized in ants and termites, adapted to this diet through digging claws, a tubular snout with a toothless jaw, and a long tongue. Unique among mammals is their body covering of large, overlapping horn scales. Depending on the species, pangolins live on the ground or in trees. Most are nocturnal. However, their exact lifestyle is not well studied. They prefer both forests and partly open landscapes in lowlands and mid-mountain elevations. In case of threat, they can curl up into a ball. This ability is also referred to by the originally Malay word pangolin, whose modification pangolin is used mainly in English and French as a colloquial term for a pangolin. The current family name Manatee was introduced in 1821. In the early research history of the 19th and early 20th centuries, pangolins were considered close relatives of anteaters and armadillos. With the former, they share the toothless mouth and long tongue. This led to the establishment of a taxon named Edentata, in which all 3 groups of animals were classified for a long time. Only modern molecular genetic studies since the mid-1980s have shown that pangolins are more closely related to carnivores. The similarities with anteaters and armadillos are therefore due to convergence. The loss of teeth and specialized lifestyle result in pangolins rarely being found as fossils. The earliest representatives of manatee are known from the Pliocene, about 5 million years ago. Related forms appeared in the Middle Eocene, about 47 million years ago. Pangolins have an elongated body with short limbs, a small, pointed head, and a long tail. The head-body length varies by species. For smaller species like the white-bellied, Phataginus tricuspis, and the long-tailed pangolin, Phataginus tetradactyla, it ranges from 25 to 43 centimeters. The largest species is the giant pangolin, Smutsia gigantea, with 67 to 81 centimeters. The tail length ranges from 25 to 70 centimeters. In tree-dwelling pangolins, the tail surpasses the rest of the body length. In others, it is the same length or shorter. The weight varies between 1.6 and 33 kilograms, with males usually being larger than females. Fossil records show a species named Manus paleojavanica from the Pleistocene of Southeast Asia, which reached a total length of about 2.5 meters, representing the largest known pangolin species to date. The head of pangolins is small and conically shaped. Their eyes are small and protected by bulging, gland-free eyelids. African species lack external ear structures, while Asian species often have only a thickened ridge. The nose can be closed with a skin fold, plica alaris, which is advantageous when the animals insert their snouts into insect nests for feeding. A defining characteristic is their unique body covering of large horn scales, which cover the top of the head, the trunk, the outer sides of the limbs, excluding the forearms in some species, and the upper and lower sides of the tail. Only the face, belly, and inner sides of the limbs are unscaled and have gray, tough skin covered with white, brown, or black hair. In African pangolins, the scales on the back of the tail tip are irregular or paired, while in Asian pangolins, they are always regularly arranged in a single row. On the underside of the tail tip, tree-dwelling pangolins have a free area covered with horny skin. In ground-dwelling species, the armor is closed. Only in Asian species do individual hairs grow between the scales of the back armor. The limbs appear short and strong, ending in 5 toes each, pentadactyl. The forelimbs show adaptations to a digging lifestyle, with the middle 3 fingers having long, curved claws, the middle one being particularly larger. The claws on the first and fifth fingers are reduced and not used for digging. The hind limbs are more robust and slightly longer, also with 5 toes equipped with claws. Generally, the forefoot claws of ground-dwelling pangolins are longer and less curved compared to those of tree-dwelling species. The latter have significantly longer hind foot claws to aid in tree climbing. The skull ranges from 6 to 16 centimeters in length. It is generally conical in shape with a tubular snout that tapers slightly forward and is somewhat elongated. Since the food is not chewed, the jaw muscles are reduced, resulting in few bony projections for muscle attachment. This gives the skull a very smooth appearance, making it one of the simplest structured skulls among mammals. A distinctive feature is the incomplete zygomatic arch, a trait pangolins share with anteaters of South America that are also specialized in ants and termites, and is often seen as an adaptation to this diet. However, some pangolins, such as the Chinese pangolin, sometimes have closed zygomatic arches. Other general characteristics include the elongated nasal bones and the relatively large frontal bones, compared to the parietal bones. Teeth are completely absent. The lower jaw is formed only as a simple bony brace with weakly developed, rearward-facing, spherical joint ends that allow little movement of the lower jaw. The symphysis of the lower jaw forms a flat surface over which the tongue can glide. However, at the rear end of the symphysis, a pair of bony, conically pointed projections, resembling a canine tooth, appears as a characteristic of all pangolins. The scale armor, along with the rest of the skin, makes up about 1/4 to 1/3 of the total body weight. It consists of 160 to 290 individual scales, nearly half of which are on the tail. They are movable and overlap each other like roof tiles. They are arranged in rows, with the number of rows on the trunk varying between 13 and 25. The color of the scales ranges from dark brown to olive green to yellowish. They are triangular to V-shaped. Large scales are 7 to 8 centimeters long and wide. The surface has longitudinal ridges and sharp edges. The largest scales are usually on the back, with tips pointing backward. When curled up, the sharp ends stick out like a half-opened pine cone. The scale armor protects less against ant or termite bites or skin parasites, and more against injuries from larger predators or during underground digging. The scales are made of keratin. They are thus keratinized formations of the epidermis that sit on backward bent projections of the dermis. In cross-section, 3 layers can be distinguished. The upper dorsal plate accounts for about 1/6 of the thickness and consists of flattened, highly keratinized cells. The middle plate, which takes up the most space, is made of less flattened, keratinized cells. The ventral plate forms the underside of the scale and is only a few cells thick. All 3 plates form from different epidermal germ areas. The absence of filaments shows that the scales are not, as previously thought, matted hair. Structurally, they are more comparable to the fingernails of primates and grow constantly, which compensates for wear. This distinguishes them from the scales of reptiles, which sometimes need to be shed annually. It is suspected that the scale armor developed early in the evolution of pangolins. The oldest evidence comes from Eomanes from the Middle Eocene, about 47 million years ago, found in the Messel pit in Hesse. Possibly, the tail scaling developed first, which would be seen as a homologous development to some rodent representatives like the house mouse or the nutria, as well as tree shrews. Only later did a complete body armor develop. The number of vertebrae varies from species to species, ranging from 48 in the steppe pangolin, Smutsia teminki, to over 70 in the long-tailed pangolin. Overall, the spine consists of 7 cervical, 12 to 15 thoracic, 5 to 6 lumbar, 2 to 4 sacral, and 21 to 50 caudal vertebrae, depending on the species. The animals can roll up well, because the pelvis is very short, the ilium is bent outward, and the lumbar vertebrae are elongated. The caudal vertebrae have chevron bones on the underside, which serve as attachment points for the strong tail muscles, as the tail is wrapped shield-like around the body when curled up. The xiphoid process at the rear end of the sternum is enlarged into the pelvic region and serves as an attachment point for the complex tongue muscles. The humerus is particularly robust, adapted for digging and tree climbing. It has a very broad elbow joint and, typical for pangolins, a strong deltoid crest that wraps around the shaft and serves as an attachment point for the shoulder muscles. On the femur, the third trochanter, another muscle attachment point on the shaft, is shifted far down to the joint ends and is thus hardly visible. In very primitive Phalidota, this is located significantly higher and prominently on the shaft. Another distinctive feature is the elongated third phalanges of the toes of the front and hind feet, which have deep notches at the ends where the claws attach. A very characteristic feature is the worm-shaped tongue covered with sticky saliva, which is used to capture food. It can be up to 70 centimeters long in the giant pangolin and extend up to 25 centimeters, while in the Chinese pangolin, it can reach up to 41 centimeters in length with a diameter of up to 1.1 centimeters. Its complex musculature consists of longitudinal and radial muscle fibers. At rest, the front part of the tongue is coiled up in the mouth, the surface is roughened in the front area by conical papillae, and there are mushroom-shaped taste papillae at the tip. Unlike other mammals, the tongue is not attached to the hyoid bone but is connected to the rear part of the sternum via an external muscle system that is partly homologous to the hyoid muscles. The hyoid bone in pangolins has a different function. It scrapes off insects sticking to the tongue at the entrance to the esophagus. The salivary glands are enlarged and extend into the chest and axillary region. The muscular stomach is responsible for mechanically grinding up insects. It is lined with keratinized and layered squamous epithelium, which protects it from the bites and toxins of ants and termites. The greatly enlarged pyloric muscles grind the swallowed food and are equipped with ossified spines, pyloric spines. For better grinding, small stones are also swallowed. The gastric glands are very long and tubular. They form glandular bundles that empty through a central duct into the pylorus. The entire intestinal tract of the Chinese pangolin reaches a length of 5.2 meters and a diameter of about 1 centimeter. It is coiled and shows no differences between the small and large intestines. In some individuals, there is a slight thickening or coiling in the posterior part, which may indicate the transition from the small to the large intestine. The brain is very simple and small, making up only about 0.2 to 0.5% of the body weight in the Malayan pangolin. Only the olfactory bulb is well developed, so the sense of smell plays a significant role in foraging and communication with conspecifics. Based on the brain structure, mainly referring to the cerebellum, Asian species are somewhat more primitive than African ones. Pangolins live in sub-Saharan Africa as well as South, Southeast, and East Asia. In Africa, their range extends from Senegal and Sudan to South Africa. In Asia, they are found from Pakistan and Nepal through India and the Indo-Chinese peninsula to southern mainland China and from the Malay Peninsula to Borneo and the Philippines. Thus, pangolins primarily inhabit tropical regions. Their habitat includes a variety of landscape types, such as floodplain and swamp forests, rainforests, open savannas, shrublands, and mosaic-like vegetation areas. They also tolerate human-modified secondary landscapes such as plantations, garden landscapes, and farmland, which must provide sufficient cover in the form of trees or rocks and burrows. However, the animals avoid human settlements and cropland and are sensitive to pesticides. Pangolins use both lowlands and highlands. The Indian pangolin, Manus crassicaudata, has been recorded at elevations up to around 2,300 meters in the Nilgiri Hills in India. Essential requirements for pangolins' presence include dense ground vegetation, sufficient food sources of ants and termites, and water. Due to the diverse landscapes utilized and partial specialization on different food groups, there is rarely any overlap of the individual ecological niches used by sympatrically occurring species. In some cases, however, increased niche formation occurs. For example, the long-tailed pangolin increasingly uses aquatic areas in regions where the white-bellied pangolin is also present. The Chinese pangolin, Manus pentadactyla, continues to live in northern Vietnam, where the Malayan pangolin, Manus javanica, is also found, primarily at elevations above 600 meters. Even with other highly specialized insectivores, such as the African aardvark or Icterapus, there is hardly any overlap in the same landscapes due to strong niche formation. Pangolins are rather shy and cautious animals. In case of threat, they initially try to reach their protective shelter. If they do not succeed, they can curl up into a ball. The muscular tail is placed over the unprotected belly and face to protect these areas from attacks. In the curled-up state, they also raise their scales, whose sharp edges provide additional protection. Smaller species also interlock the tail scales with those of the neck, making it difficult to unroll them. Additionally, they can deliver quick defensive strikes with the tail, which are particularly effective thanks to the sharp scale edges. There is a report from Indonesia where a pangolin curled up into a ball and rolled down a slope, covering 30 meters in 10 seconds. Another defense method is spraying a foul-smelling secretion from the anal glands, similar to skunks. The long claws are not used for defense. Pangolins, Manatee, are currently the only family in the order Phalidota. According to modern molecular biological studies, pangolins are the closest living relatives of carnivores, Carnivora. Together, both orders form the higher taxon Phaearia. They are thus part of the superorder Loriciotheria, one of the four main lines of higher mammals. According to genetic analyses, the separation of carnivores from pangolins possibly occurred as early as the late Cretaceous, more than 80 million years ago, or at the beginning of the Paleocene, nearly 65 million years ago. The Phalidota, in addition to today's pangolins, include two closely related but extinct families, the Eomanidae and the Patriomanidae, the latter of which are considered the sister group of the Manatee. The next related major group is the Palaeonodonta. This also extinct group of mammals is known from the Paleocene and Eocene, primarily from North America, but more rarely from Europe and East Asia, and is divided into three families, the Escobatodontidae, the Apoicotheridiidae, and the Metachiromyidae. It is also possible that Ernanodon from East Asia must be included in the Palaeonodonta. This species originally formed the monotypic Ernanodonta, but after analyses of an almost complete skeleton, it is now considered closer to Palaeonodon. The Palaeonodonta also showed adaptations to a digging and insect-eating lifestyle, such as strong limbs with large claws and reduced, unspecialized teeth with only a thin layer of enamel. Due to some primitive features, such as developed teeth, they could also be the predecessors of the Phalidota. The similarity is so strong that the Palaeonodonta and the Phalidota are now grouped together in the higher taxon, Phalidotomorpha. That's it for Sandslash. Next week, we'll take care of Nidoqueen and Nidoking and their relationships with Sandslash. Feel free to subscribe to our channel, leave a like, and check back next time.